Now, the most important event for the Israelites, and this was before they actually left Egypt, was the celebration of Passover. Passover took place when God destroyed the firstborn of the Egyptians, but He passed over the Hebrews because they put blood over their door, and that signified that they were part of the family of Abraham. Therefore, they were saved. And there was a dinner that was served during this time, and that dinner is still served today. And it's interesting that it is the Passover dinner that Jesus and His disciples were eating that Christians call today the Last Supper. So this tradition of Passover becomes very important to the Israelites in their thinking of their relationship with Yahweh. Now, they escaped and become a roving nomadic band, a group, a nation, and they will spend much of their time in the desert area, which is good because they were not harassed while they were out there. In fact, it seems that they went into the desert area so that Pharaoh wouldn't follow them in, and probably would have thought that they just died off. And this little band of families and other Semites who escaped from Egypt becomes the nation of Israel, the Hebrew nation, that has had a tremendous influence over the Western civilization. Now, it is said at times that there is no direct evidence that this took place outside of the Bible, depending on whether you're a traditional scholar or a modern scholar, would have something to do with how you would parse that information. Many traditional scholars say that there is direct evidence that the Hyksos were there, evidence that there was a migration out of Egypt, just as the Old Testament tells us. There are indications of this wandering band by other people, and it's obvious that these Semitic bands go to the mountain area between Moab and the plains of Philistia, and they become a nation. So depending on how you look at the information, while there is no absolute direct word of Israel and what happened to them, one of the things you consider is the Old Testament is also a document that holds, according to some, historical truth. So that is a testament. Just because it's not old and written on rock doesn't mean that it's not valid. That's what a traditional scholar would tell us. Now, they continue moving through the desert area, and the next important thing that happens for them is that Moses receives the law from God. Now, this law is a law of covenant. It is a social, moral law, and it is also a law of ceremony, and that also means a ceremony of what they can and cannot eat. As you know, the Jewish people have strict dietary laws that they follow. And so this law was given. Of course, we know the law quite often. We refer to the law as the Ten Commandments. That's just a small part of the law. And the Ten Commandments are given to the Israelites and this other law. And what it does, according to Hebrew thought, is this law separates them from other nations, or the word that's used is sanctified, or made them holy. So it separates them from all other people. And this is true. They are very different from all other people living in that area, and all known people. They have very different ways. And so this helps to give them an identity that they follow. They make a mistake by worshiping a golden calf. Now, quite often we think of the golden calf as the idol, but actually we think this is sort of an extension of the Canaanite gods, because they also had bulls as a representation of what a god stands on. The god is invisible, but it is a bull, a great bull that the god stands on. And so we think that that may be what they are representing in the golden calf, that it's actually the stand on which the lesser known or the other god would stand on. Nevertheless, it is an idol. It is something that is forbidden in Hebrew thinking. Again, think back to that first discussion question, and you can see that these Hebrew people believe they have a very special relationship with God. And all of these things to them point that there is this redemptive history, that of all the great peoples that lived on the earth at that time, this little nation was called to be the ones that present Yahweh, the one true God, to all mankind. And that's sort of all of this history sort of points in that direction. Now, they make their way through the desert area over 40 years, and eventually they start to move into the area that we know of today as Israel. So the question is, if Moses records his own death, how could he have written the Pentateuch? Well, it's thought that Joshua actually takes over from Moses. The other thing that quite often is identified is that it's written in third person. It's not written I, Moses. But then again, a great deal of the ancient literature of that time, that's exactly how it was written. It was written as if a third person was looking at it. You didn't use pronouns I and me very much. So that's not uncommon as well. And there are said to be some anachronisms, but in close inspection, very few people talk about the anachronisms, which means writing about something as if it happened before it actually happened. The example of that is using camels, domesticated camels. It said that camels weren't domesticated by the Hebrews at that time. Well, we found camel rope and other products of camels, and this is starting to change the mind of some scholars that maybe camels were domesticated before we knew it. Okay, so they eventually are going to move into the Promised Land, and this is where we'll take up next week when we start looking at the conquest and Joshua.